If there was a question about whether we're headed for a second housing shock, that was settled last week with news that home prices have fallen a sixth consecutive month. Values are down nearly to the levels of the Great Recession. One thing weighing on the economy is the huge number of foreclosed houses. Many are stuck on the market for a reason that you wouldn't expect. Banks can't find the ownership documents. It's bizarre, but it turns out that Wall Street cut corners when it created those mortgage-backed investments that triggered the financial collapse. Now that banks want to evict people, they're unwinding these exotic investments to find that often the legal documents behind the mortgages aren't there. Caught in a jam of their own making, some companies appear to be resorting to forgery and phony paperwork to throw people down on their luck out of their homes. In the 1930s, we had bread lines. Venture out before dawn in America today, and you'll find mortgage lines.
The story will continue in a moment.
These folks on the street aren't homeless. They slept on the sidewalk because they want to keep their homes. Facing foreclosure, they camped out in January to get in line to beg their bank for lower payments on their mortgage. So many in the country are desperate now that they have to meet in convention centers coast to coast.
We understand people have been here for a day or two. For 2 days.
2.5.
This was Los Angeles, where 37,000 homeowners gathered. And this was Miami in February, where the worry was visible and shared by 12,000 more. The line went down the block and doubled back twice. Turns out these banks, which demand borrowers have all of their paperwork just right, these same banks have fouled up their own paperwork to a historic degree.
In my mind, this is an absolute intentional fraud.
Lynn Simoniak is fighting foreclosure, and while trying to save her house, she discovered something we did not know. Back when Wall Street was using algorithms and computers to engineer those disastrous mortgage-backed securities, it appears they didn't want old-fashioned paperwork slowing down the profits.
This was back when it was a white-hot, fevered pitch to move as many of these as possible.
When you could make a whole lot of money through securitization, and every other aspect of it could be done electronically, keystrokes. This was the only piece where somebody was supposed to actually go get documents, transfer the documents from one entity to the other. And it looks very much like they just eliminated that step altogether.
Simoniak's mortgage had been bundled with thousands of others into one of those Wall Street securities traded from investor to investor. When the bank took Simoniak to court, it first said that it had lost her documents, including the critical assignment of mortgage, which transfers ownership. But then there was a courthouse surprise.
They found all of your paperwork more than a year after they initially said that they had lost it.
Yes.
Did that seem suspicious to you?
Yes, absolutely. And what do you imagine? It fell behind the file cabinet? Where was all of this? We had it, we own it, we lost it, and then more recently, everyone is coming in saying, hey, we found it. Isn't that wonderful?
But what the bank may not have known is Lynn Simoniak is a lawyer and fraud investigator with a specialty in forged documents. She has trained FBI agents.
Did you ask for copies of those documents?
Yes.
And what did you find?
When I looked at the assignment of mortgage, and this is the assignment, a copy from my case, I looked at even the date they put in, which was 10/17/2008, was several months after they sued me for foreclosure. So what they were saying to the court was, we sued her in July of 2008, and we acquired this mortgage in October of 2008. It made absolutely no sense.
Curious, she used her legal training to go online and researched 10,000 mortgages.
Then I began to find the strange signatures.
One of the strangest signatures belonged to the bank vice president who'd signed Simoniak's newly discovered mortgage documents. The name is Linda Green, but on thousands of other mortgages, the style of Green's signature changed a lot, and even more remarkable, Simoniak found that Linda Green was vice president of 20 banks, all at the same time.
All within the same week. I mean, this is a very, very active person. And you can
Where
find
did
the
all
same
those
thing.
documents come from? Once housed here in Alpharetta, Georgia, was a sweatshop for forged mortgage documents.
They were sitting in a room signing their name as fast as they possibly could to any kind of nonsense document that was put in front of them.
Docs and companies like it were recreating missing mortgage assignments for the banks and providing the legally required signatures of bank vice presidents and notaries. Linda Green says she was named a bank vice president by Docs because her name was short and easy to spell. As demand exploded, Docs needed more Linda Greens.
So it was a common practice in the last few years to flood the courts with these documents.
And look at some of the junk the courts were flooded with. Sometimes the document mill didn't even bother to fill in the name of the supposed owners. To them, it seemed like a joke.
Instead of the name of the bank here that was acquiring the loan, this one says bogus assignee for intervening assignments. That's who acquired this loan.
This was an actual document that was in litigation.
Yes. And what corporation assigned this loan? A corporation identified as a bad beanie. Excuse me, when I saw that, I was just absolutely amazed. And
What does that mean, a bad beanie?
it could possibly mean a bad beneficiary. I have no idea what they meant. So here's the same woman, Linda Green, and this time, instead of being a vice president of American Home Mortgage Servicing, she's vice president of a bad bean.
Simoniak says that the banks whose paperwork was handled by the Docs forgery mill included Wells Fargo, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Citibank, U.S. Bank, and Bank of America. We contacted all of them, and each said that it farmed out its mortgage servicing work to other companies, and it was those mortgage servicing firms that hired Docs.
It's astonishing to me that this became as pervasive as a problem that it is.
It got sloppy.
It got very sloppy.
Sheila Baer is one of the government's top banking regulators as chairman of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
You just described it as pervasive.
Yeah, it is pervasive. It absolutely is pervasive. And it was just a matter of cutting corners, not spending enough money, not having the quality controls.
Incompetent banking back then is causing foreclosure ghettos today. Although banks say the courts have been accepting their paperwork, now that's changing as desperate homeowners countersue the banks over the document fiasco. This leaves houses unsold indefinitely, undermining the recovery.
I'm very worried about if this starts getting out of hand, the kind of impact it will have.
These are lawsuits by homeowners.
Yes,
who are
yes.
being foreclosed upon, saying,
Yes, or are in the process or have already been foreclosed on.
saying
yes.
prove it.
Yes, exactly.
Prove that you own this.
Exactly.
How big an issue is that going to be? There are 30,000
Well,
today.
I think this litigation could easily get out of control, and we would like to get ahead of it. We're already feeling like we're falling behind it.
Chairman Baer thinks rotten mortgage documents are so threatening to the economy that the government should force banks to pay into a massive fund.
But you think there needs to be a cleanup fund,
I do.
just
It's
like you would
cleanup fund's
have
a good word for it,
for
yes.
a natural disaster.
Yes, somewhat like that. Yes, this is one of human making, but yes.
You don't want to give an exact dollar amount for this cleanup fund, but what are we talking about? Is it billions?
It would be,
be?
yes, I would assume it would be billions, yes.
Billions of
Yes.
dollars.
Yes, absolutely.
Chairman Baer's proposed cleanup fund would pay homeowners to accept a bank's ownership claim without a lawsuit. She says that this could be cheaper for the banks than trying to recreate the missing documents legitimately and not through the document mills.
I think eventually the bank could prove who owned it, but it would take a lot of time and expense.
You know, none of the major banks were willing to sit down with us and talk to us about this, not even the American Bankers Association.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Why do you think that is?
They're feeling very defensive now, and so I can only assume that is the reason why they decline.